Explain to the group, what is Lewy body?
Well, there are proteins that are developed in the brain that attach to the nerve cells and, create problems. And so it's one of the lesser known dementias. I mean, people usually think of Alzheimer's, and of course, Alzheimer's makes up about 60% of the cases. So certainly it's understandable while people sometimes equate, dementia with Alzheimer's. And yet Lewy body, as I said, it's one of the more aggressive forms of dementia, and they don't know as much about it. There aren't any drugs currently available, at least in the pharmaceutical realm, to slow the progression the way they are coming out with some things for Alzheimer's.
The following information is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not meant to diagnose, treat, prevent, cure, or prescribe for any medical or psychological conditions. Seek out the opinion of a qualified healthcare professional if you need medical attention. The guests of this show provide their own opinions and may not represent the values or beliefs of Living Waters Wellness Center or Whole Body Detox Show. And welcome everyone to today's Whole Body Detox Show. I'm David DeHaas from Living Waters Wellness Center. Living Waters Wellness Center was formed after we discovered how to heal my body from multiple symptoms, including allergies, asthma, chronic fatigue, back pain, psoriasis, acne, hives, yeast infections, and finally cancer, and I did it all naturally. After 20 years of trying numerous different treatments, medical treatments, cleanses, iridology, muscle therapy, acupuncture, acupressure, homeopathy, naturopathy, those experiences led us to discover that recipe that led to become known as the 4 Natural Laws of Healing. Combining multiple natural healing modalities to fully detox and cleanse the body and allowing the body to take the perfect nutrition to fully restore the body back to its innate health. This became known as a 10-day healing retreat. We've helped thousands of people just like you get their health restored so they can live their life to the fullest. And if you want to learn how you can get your body back to living your best life, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on that link, 4 Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video. Or call the office at 208-3789-911.
Hey, good morning, everyone. David DeHaas from Living Waters Wellness Center, where miracles begin by healing from within. And today I have a very special guest. Her name is Diane Chew. And Diane is in the unique arena, I guess you might call it that, of she's a dementia coach. And since I have a family member that has dementia, this is a very hot topic for me. I know a lot of other people as well. I kind of followed you a little bit on Instagram for a while. And so I did reached out to you and you responded back and we connected. So welcome to the show, Diane.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here and learn more about what you offer as well, because, the good news is there is more and more information available for us, obviously, as caregivers and unique ways to help our loved ones. So, I'm always open, always open.
Right. So your husband, his name's Ben.
Yes, exactly.
And so he's got Lewy Body Dementia. Maybe explain to the group, what is Lewy Body?
Well, there are proteins that are developed in the brain that attach to the nerve cells and, create problems. And so it's one of the lesser known dementias. I mean, people usually think of Alzheimer's, and of course, Alzheimer's makes up about 60% of the cases. So certainly it's understandable while people sometimes equate, dementia with Alzheimer's. And yet Lewy body, as I said, it's one of the more aggressive forms of dementia, and they don't know as much about it. There aren't any drugs currently available, at least in the pharmaceutical realm, to slow the progression the way they are coming out with some things for Alzheimer's. And so at least, in our situation, the symptoms progressed really, really quickly. And it's also, by the way, impossible to diagnose Lewy body for sure until autopsy. So, and then they can actually, detect those proteins in the brain. So actually the diagnosis for Ben was made based on detailed notes I had been keeping for close to 2 years as everything was happening so rapidly. And it wasn't until he landed in the hospital because of a reaction to a medication that I finally had a neurologist, listen to me and make the diagnosis based on, the combination of symptoms, quite honestly. So it's, and I don't know if there's any dementia that is really pure one way or the other. There are certainly some parallels between Lewy body dementia and Parkinson's. And so there are some things that we can learn from the, arena of Parkinson's that can help Ben and vice versa. But again, a kind of long-winded answer to your question. But as I said, it's one of the lesser known, very aggressive, and and it's based, they think, on these abnormal proteins that form in the brain and attach to the brain cells.
Well, it's interesting because as I was going down and searching, because I have a family member that has dementia, and the Alzheimer's was based upon a lie, that whole diagnosis. Did you know that? In 1910, this guy did Dr. Alzheimer's did an autopsy and said it's because of the amyloid plaques that we have Alzheimer's. In 1972, they decided we need to get some money for this. So they rattled up the sabers, if you will, and went to Congress and said, we need money to fight Alzheimer's. And so they started getting something like $2 billion a year. They've produced, I think, 3 drugs for Alzheimer's, which none of them work.
Yeah, not surprised to hear about that.
And in fact, my family member had been put on one of those. I just took her off and took her off slowly off that one. But anyway, so much has came out in the last 11 years on Alzheimer's, dementia. And I did a series of shows, told you before we came on, I think episodes 199, what to do to create it, lose your memory, which is, obvious things, right? But about 200 through 210, there's about 6 episodes I did in that range. I'll put these in the show notes of those of you who are listening on the radio. Go to Whole Body Detox Show.com or put in Whole Body Detox Show on your podcast app, and there'll be a thing called show notes, and we'll put all the links to Diane's information and so forth, because she's a coach. You may want to reach out to her. But anyway, I just found like, wow. So all these years, these drugs they've been prescribing, it's all been based upon a lie, just based upon so we can get money. Kind of like we found out through the Doge efforts recently, all these different agencies that turning no good.
Sure.
So anyway, I found that was interesting. So how many other things are they not telling us, or they're telling us that it's not true?
I think, that there's that. And then there's also, their best guesses. I mean, I actually used to work for Big Pharma. So there's a place for them, of course. But I have found that, again, most physicians, of course, are trained to use pharmaceuticals and, things that are FDA approved. And, for Ben, for instance, they were just guessing in terms of what might help his symptoms. And unfortunately, they tend to put anybody with Lewy Body Dementia on an antipsychotic, for instance, because hallucinations are relatively common. And in Ben's case, he was not recognizing me. And that was really scary. I mean, that's a story in and of itself, but that wasn't actually technically a hallucination. I mean, it's something that's called the imposter syndrome, and it can happen in Lewy body dementia, where he looked at me and I looked like his wife or somebody he knew, but he thought I was an imposter. And, and yet he was placed, and again, things were happening so fast that, time to do research was like 0. I mean, I actually started out as in research. I'm a molecular biologist. So, I mean, it's something that I wanted to do, but boy, when all of a sudden it hits home and things are happening so quickly, my time for research went out the window. So I just was reacting, unfortunately, to what was going on. But I mean, I have found that, as I said, they are very quick to, load up the patient with a cocktail of medications. And I quite honestly wished we had not done that, or taken it a little slower and been able to try things that frankly are more natural and, that we have since come to find have been really helpful for Ben. And you just said, you took your loved one off of a medication slowly. I've been trying to take Ben off the antipsychotic for like 2 years now, and his withdrawal symptoms are so dramatic that I have not been successful. But
wow.
But we have been successful in adding some things that have been helpful without having to raise the dose. So it's been it's an intense journey for sure.
Yeah, none of us are prepared for this. And then when we get into the throes of it, and in my case, it was, Mom was 4 hours away, so I didn't see her that often. And she always sounded just perfect on the phone. And my dad never really, I knew Mom was missing some things. She would repeat things, but I didn't know to the extent. I knew something needed to be done, but again, kind of out of sight, out of mind. And
of course, it's hard when you're not there.
Yeah. And then we did some stuff in the last year of Dad's life. And of course, that was so stressful for her, married for 68 years, losing your,
oh my gosh. Yeah.
love of her life. And then after the funeral, we pulled her and then put her in a new living situation. Really tough. But like I told Mom the other day, I says, Mom, look at, she's complaining about where she's at. And it's just not the church group. She used to be, my mom was active in everything. I mean, this gal not only built her own house, but she had her own insurance agency. She had a knitting and yarn shop. She involved in everything in town. She wrote a book. Was head of the genealogy societies, head of the Seroptimus at one time. I mean, she was a volunteer to everything. Little town of 300 to 200 people, right? She was involved in everything. Well, now, she doesn't have that group. So that's been really difficult. But I said, look, you got your kids. They're all right here. You can see anytime. And I see you're a mile from me. I see almost every other day. And I mean, so you got your walking. You don't have to. You're not in a wheelchair. You can dress yourself. You can do all these things. You're so lucky.
Well, and I trust that she will adapt. I mean, I certainly, have learned how to give myself and Ben, I call it space and grace, because there are patterns that we can recognize and respond to, but there are no rules.
So you said it was kind of sudden. So kind of walk us through, and then what did you do for meds and that you wish now that you wouldn't have done? I think that'll be very helpful for a lot of people that will find this.
Yeah, sure. Well, as I said, one of the challenges early on, and this is not true of everybody, that's living with cognitive changes, but Ben didn't recognize his own problem. So I had to trick him, for instance, to go to the emergency room early on and at least rule out a brain tumor. I mean, I was accused of being in denial. I'm like, I'm not in denial. I'm just confused, and I can't get him to a doctor because I would make appointments and I would, and then he would back out of it at the last minute. And, that was a challenge in and of itself. But I finally convinced him, for instance, to go to our primary care doctor for our Medicare checkup, our annual Medicare checkup. And I had been in touch with the office beforehand. In fact, I had talked to the nurse, I think, almost every day when I was going through this experience of him not recognizing me. And so to answer your question, we tried, some of the standard drugs that they will put, like an anti-anxiety drug, something to help him sleep, because those are part of the symptoms that we saw early on, is that he wasn't sleeping and his agitation had increased so dramatically, and his anxiety. And so they didn't, frankly, really do anything. And as I said, everybody's different. So, I mean, I certainly want to share my story in the hopes that people would just maybe ask more questions. And, but, what I found was that when I finally actually had to call the police, which was awful. I mean, because his symptoms started in 2021. And it was almost overnight that he didn't recognize me and thought I was his mother, and wow. Had this distorted sense of time where, for instance, he thought we had just moved into our house when we've been here almost 30 years. And he thought his parents had just passed away when, again, they had been gone for almost 30 years. And so I was like, what's going on? And actually, this is, I think, an important part of our story that I can share. Ben is a musician. And that was both his hobby and his career. He ran recording studios and, recorded other artists, and himself played a lot of live, gigs and everything. But the point is, cannabis had been a part of his lifestyle since he was young. And if I start to put all the pieces together, I think he was always highly functioning. And in fact, whenever he would stop using cannabis and say he was going on a health kick or something, because again, there was still such a stigma attached to it, his anxiety would get so bad that I'd be like, wow, hon, smoke a joint, come on. And so again, if I put all the pieces together, Ben is a highly sensitive, highly creative person, maybe even on the spectrum a little bit, a touch of autism. And it was actually self-medicating and self-soothing, because now we know, of course, that medical marijuana has been approved for these conditions and can be a game changer for people. So, as I said, Ben actually was using it, and even though, as I said, I was starting to see some signs of, something going wrong. But again, I was, like many people, you're confused, is that he tends to be so right-brained oriented, for instance, that once after asking me the same question like 5 times in a row, I turned to him and I said, hon, what's going on? And he said, well, are you writing a song in your head? And I was like, no, actually, I'm not. Okay. And I do tend to be a lot more left brain oriented. So I chalked it up to, again, him being in his creative process, and I didn't think too much more of it. But then, as I said, there were some of these time distortion things that were happening, and I thought, wow, something's going on. But the symptoms blew up when he actually stopped using cannabis. He ended up having an anxiety attack, which was rare, but it can happen. There's what they call a biphasic effect with THC, where, it can help anxiety, but if you get too much in your system, you have the reverse effect. So it was just one night that he had this anxiety attack, and the next day he said, that's it, I'm not going to use it anymore. I'm like, is that such a good idea when, you're 68 years old and you've been using it since you were young, and we know it helps with your anxiety? But he quit cold turkey. And I'm telling you, 1 week later, his symptoms that I now know of dementia just blew up in our faces. And it was really, he stopped sleeping. He was driving and getting lost, and I'm frantically, trying to get some help. And I was talking with drug and alcohol counselors, saying, like, could this be withdrawal? And they all assured me yes, and he had his medical marijuana card, and I was like, hun, like let's get you back on something to kind of straighten out your system. But he was totally against it, and so as I didn't know what to do. And then things actually kind of it seemed like they evened out, because his sleeping patterns changed to actually, what I would say, match mine, because for all the years we knew each other, he kept musician hours, which was, quite honestly, he would be up all night. That was his most creative time. Or when he was playing gigs, he'd be up all night, and he'd go to bed at 6 as I was getting up. And so that whole thing reversed. And for about 6 months, I was like, oh, okay, we're all right. Like the symptoms seemed to calm down, and he seemed like himself again. And then these episodes started of him not recognizing me early in 2022. And so back to your original question about, what we did, we went the pharmaceutical route early on, because, as I said, I couldn't get him back on anything in terms of, the medical marijuana. Nothing really helped. I ended up having to call the police on him. This was late in 2022, because he didn't know who I was. And he's like, who's this person in my house? And he started to get really aggressive.
Wow.
And we ended up like in the emergency room over Christmas in 2022. And this is where, he did have both a neuro and a psych consult, but once again, without, more in-depth testing, which they wouldn't do on an emergency situation like that. They put him on an antipsychotic. So it did seem to help for about a month. And then he started having side effects, and in fact, I didn't have a good feeling about the drug, and I kind of took it into my own hands, and I cut the dose in half, thank God, because even on half the dose that had been prescribed, he ended up having a reaction. And these drugs have got black box warnings. I mean, we really should be using them with extreme caution. And so he landed back in the hospital for like 10 days in the spring of 23. And again, if I look back on it, I wish I had just taken the initiative to get him back on, I'm going to call it plant medicine, because he now is on a regimen of, he's taking gummies from a company called Healer. And I can't tell you how much of a game changer it's been. He still does take pharmaceuticals. I haven't taken him off those pharmaceuticals. As I said, I tried, but the withdrawal symptoms were too intense. But I was able to add finally a combination of THC, which we know does have a psychoactive effect, but a lesser known cannabinoid called CBG, which has a calming effect on the body without a psychoactive effect. And the combination's just been a game changer for us, because now he actually is sleeping, 7 to 8 hours a night. Not every single night. I mean, none of the factors, come in, but my gosh, he's sleeping, which of course then makes it so much better for him during the day, because we all know what a lack of sleep can do, whether you're going through cognitive changes or not. But especially, for someone, the sleep is just so important. So,
Well, you're using CBG and CBD.
no, in Ben's case, it's just THC
Okay.
and CBG.
Okay.
For him, the CBD, while it does help some people to be a little bit more alert during the day, it's too much for him. It makes him, he's already, if anybody's seen any videos of my dear guy, he's constantly in motion, especially when he's standing. So we need to keep him, again, try to continually give his body that chance to calm down. And so what was, again, by chance, and, just as we were talking a little bit before the show, those God nudges, that come in, I'm going to call it plant medicine, because he now is on a regimen of, he's taking gummies from a company called Healer. And I can't tell you how much of a game changer it's been. He still does take pharmaceuticals. I haven't taken him off those pharmaceuticals. As I said, I tried, but the withdrawal symptoms were too intense. But I was able to add finally a combination of THC, which we know does have a psychoactive effect, but a lesser known cannabinoid called CBG, which has a calming effect on the body without a psychoactive effect. And the combination's just been a game changer for us, because now he actually is sleeping, 7 to 8 hours a night. Not every single night. I mean, none of the factors, come in, but my gosh, he's sleeping, which of course then makes it so much better for him during the day, because we all know what a lack of sleep can do, whether you're going through cognitive changes or not. But especially, for someone, the sleep is just so important. So,
Well, you're using CBG and CBD.
no, in Ben's case, it's just THC
Okay.
and CBG.
Okay.
For him, the CBD, while it does help some people to be a little bit more alert during the day, it's too much for him. It makes him, he's already, if anybody's seen any videos of my dear guy, he's constantly in motion, especially when he's standing. So we need to keep him, again, try to continually give his body that chance to calm down. And so what was, again, by chance, and, just as we were talking a little bit before the show, those God nudges, that come in, we've had so many of them. And I am so grateful, because at one point I just said, okay, I've got to get him back on. I don't know who can help me, but I'm going to get Ben back on, some plant medicine, because I didn't want to layer on yet another pharmaceutical to help him with his agitation. And I came across an independent organization of nurses who were trained in the use of hemp-based products and were enormously helpful in me, looking at how to reintroduce this for Ben. And they are now not partnered, but aligned with a company called Healer that has actually been, was founded by two physicians. And the Healer company will pay for like the first 3 calls for getting nurse support, if this is something that you're interested in just exploring. And there's no obligation to buy from the Healer company. But as I said, for us, they've been a game changer, because I knew about THC, certainly I knew about CBD. There was a lot of hype about CBN being a really like good for sleep. And yet I found out, for instance, that CBN is just a it's really a degradation product of THC and can actually block the receptor sites for the THC. So it wasn't until I started to work with the nurses and with the healer company that I felt we actually got Ben on a regimen that has support from clinical trials and, and has, the eyes of the medical profession on it. And sure enough, we finally are getting really, really good results that have.
If you just turned in, we're talking with Dementia Coach Diane Chew. By the way, it's episode 233. Miss any parts of it, go catch it on the podcast, Whole Body Detox Show. Links at livingwaterscleanse.com. While you're there at Living Waters Cleanse, if you haven't watched it, watch the video, The 4 Natural Laws of Healing. We teach you how to heal naturally from the inside out. You got to get rid of the toxins. You got to heal the gut first, because how it lives is how you live. We'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned. Once in a lifetime, a healing tool comes across your path that can really change the ability for the body to heal naturally and quickly. We have found such a tool, and it has changed the way my family lives and how our clients at Living Waters are helping to heal their body. It's called phototherapy, and phototherapy is the ability of your body using waves of light to turn on your body's ability to make its own stem cells. No surgeries, just simply a little Band-Aid sized patch that can activate your body to make stem cells. As you age, you're producing less and less stem cells, and by age 60, you're making none. So when it comes to healing and repairing, it is a long process. We can now speed that process up by using phototherapy. Go over to stemcellpatch.net and watch the videos there. And go ahead and try these patches for a few months. These patches have helped so many of our clients reverse pain, help speed up the healing, sleep better, and on and on. You'll see some of the testimonials over there. It's an amazing little tool that you should be using right now. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee per day, you can now be increasing your body's ability to make the stem cells on its own. Stemcellpatch.net, or call the office at 208-3789-911. Nothing is more exciting than seeing a client shed their diseases and symptoms caused from accumulated toxins from the chemicals in our foods, the clothes we wear, and the air we breathe, than by cleansing through colon hydrotherapy and treating the whole body naturally. Here's what a few clients had to say about their experience at Living Waters Wellness Center.
My name's Richard. I come to Living Waters because I was low on energy and for my memory, and I've accomplished both. Living Waters did it for me. Thank you, Living Waters.
My name's Peg. I came to Living Waters about a year ago, so I run pretty hard when I'm working. But through this retreat, I think one of the biggest things that I've gained is that self-confidence. Thank you, Living Waters.
Hi, my name is Anna Lewis, and I came to do the 10-day cleanse because I hadn't been feeling really well, and so I could cleanse, get rid of parasites and toxins in my body, and those were great help. So thank you, Living Waters.
To learn more about the 10-day healing retreat, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on the link 4 Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video and check out this hundreds of clients who healed from their symptoms under the Success Stories tab, or call the office at 208-3789-911. That's 208-3789-911. The preceding examples may not be typical of your experience, may not be right for you. Talk to a healthcare professional to see if cleansing is right for you. Welcome back. We're talking to Dementia Coach Diane Chew. All the links to the show are in the show notes, episode 233 at Whole Body Detox Show. Links at livingwaterscleanse.com. And when you're over on the podcast, do give us a 5-star review and do share an episode with a buddy of yours who could benefit from learning about detoxification and healing the body naturally. Also on our website, livingwaterscleanse.com, watch the video, The 4 Natural Laws of Healing. Learn how to detox and heal properly. Now back to the show.
That they've helped.
CBD blocked. You said the CBD blocked the receptors.
No, CBN.
CBN. Okay.
Yeah. I don't want to. And again, I'm not trying to put anything down. It's just for us.
Yes. Right. Everyone's going to be different, obviously.
A little different, but that's why, as I said, what I love about what Healer has done, Dr. Sulak is one of the founders. He had a practice up in Maine, and like 15, 17 years ago, when marijuana was first approved for medical use in Maine, I think he was like the only physician in the whole state that was like willing to approve people for their medical marijuana card. Again, unfortunately, there's still such a stigma attached to it.
Right.
And but he did, and so, but because of that, he got like really resistant cases, and ended up with a lot of cases of dementia. And so out of that, he ended up really, doing clinical trials and found, how helpful specifically, different combinations were, but you can keep the THC at a very low dose, by adding something like the CBG, which, as I said, has that calming effect, which is so helpful in dementia, where the agitation and anxiety are such a big part of it and can lead to so many of the symptoms that we see in sundowning or aggression. I mean, oftentimes at the root of those challenging behaviors in dementia care is anxiety, it's agitation, trying to figure things out, and they don't understand why they can't. And that leads to such anxiety. And we all know, let's face it, that even, those of us that are technically not living with cognitive changes, I mean, when I get anxious, I don't think straight. I can't think straight. And yet I'm starting out with, you could say, more cognitive, energy than Ben is. And yet I know what it's like, when you get anxious. So we are really blessed, as I said, to have found, the company and the nurse support that comes with it. And what I've found, I guess what I would say to people is that don't think about plant medicine. First of all, please drop the darn stigma about it. We are not dosing, we're not drugging. I really feel more like I'm drugging Ben when I give him the antipsychotic than I do when I give him, these gentle plant-based gummies. And I wish people would think of it as first line therapy instead of last line therapy. They tend to go with, as I said, the pharmaceuticals, because that's how doctors are trained. No blame, no shame. But, if we could start to rethink how we're approaching this, because you've got nothing to lose and everything to gain, because you don't have the side effects that and the worst that can happen is either it does nothing or your loved one goes to sleep. I mean, quite honestly, I have not heard of any drug interactions. But again, the nurses are trained, to guide you, if your loved one is taking other pharmaceuticals, if, like for instance, Ben was used to the feeling, quite honestly, he had used cannabis all his life. If someone has not used it in the past, you want to go very low and very slow. But again, the nurses are trained to guide, you as the caregiver with your loved one, so that exactly, when to increase the dose, what to look for, and how to approach it in a healthy way. So
yeah, it's too bad, the history of all that. They finally allowed alcohol to be legal again. Then the government didn't have a department to do anything. So then they went after and demonized marijuana, called it, and that's what that got the name, Mary Jane, and all this stuff, and people are going to kill you. And just wild the propaganda in the 30s, all to support an organization that should have just been whacked and did away with completely. Instead, we got to create a problem to offer a solution. That's typical government playbook. I got to tell you, in 2018, I was sitting here with a client. This is kind of a wild story, but it ties in. And they came to see us about our 10-day healing retreat. And she had been injured by a dentist who had cut a nerve doing dental work, her trigeminal nerve. So now she's got pain that's off the charts. None of the drugs she was taking would cut the pain enough. Or if they did, it made her crazy. So these are upper middle class, both own their own business, moved out here to Boise, Idaho to retire. Wonderful people, church going. Leave it to Beaver type, great people.
Sure.
They're telling me this whole story, and they says, yeah, we were praying about it. We happened to find a guy in Baker, Oregon. So Oregon's legal on cannabis. And for a while, it was just you had to have a medical card. Now it's completely different. Anybody can go over and get it. Anyway, so they're telling me a story. Yeah, we found this guy. He grows the marijuana in Baker. He grows it. He gives it away. He makes oil for us. And then we use that rectally. And I'm going, oh. And the vision that came to me was like, and I said this to him, I said, so you're telling me you leave the state, you go over there and you get some of this product and you bring it back. So you basically have to be a criminal to reduce the pain that's going on in your body. And they both looked at me with this just stone cold, like, am I going to turn them in or something? I think that's what they're thinking.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm thinking like,
where are you going with this,
you
right?
got to be basically criminals in order to stay out of pain. And they go, yes. And I'm going like, this is insane. Now, this is, my whole thought was like, well, this is crazy. Why should it be this way? And at that time, the state was still arguing whether or not to allow hemp to be harvested.
I mean, it is a bit mind-boggling, and yet we're moving in the right direction. I mean, as I said, this, wouldn't have been available to us, 10 years ago, And
I know. And you got how many clients I have that come to me that tell me that they use usually gummies or oils or whatever because for their pain, or usually it's pain.
Well, but and a number of symptoms, and that's why like when I am coaching or at least sharing, our story, I always say especially like it can help you with a number of different symptoms, and I say, well, take one at a time. Like especially if you're caring for a loved one, talk to the nurses, talk about the symptoms that you want to address first, so you have a way to kind of to know where to start and then how to proceed. And it's because, like you said, it's anxiety, pain, sleeplessness, restlessness. I mean, it's amazing. And, if you think about it, because hemp's a plant and it's a weed, it was most likely in our diet, in the hunter-gatherer days. I think it probably always was. I'm like, it's something to help our nervous systems. And then in fact, that they used to have it in chicken feed. They took it out, whoever they were, who were so afraid we were going to get high from eating eggs. But it's back in now. And they said the difference in the color of the yolk is phenomenal.
Get out of here.
No,
so they're grinding up weed and putting it in chicken feed?
Well, I'm just saying it's used to be, and don't quote me on exactly how it's done. But I mean, It used to it was just kind of naturally part of animal feed because it's.
Wow. I had no idea. That's a cool story.
Yeah, I'm not saying it was harvested, and then put back in. It was just because it grows out there, so it's just part of it. My point is they specifically took it out when there was this, fear that we were going to get high off of, as I said, eating eggs.
Well, there's a lot of things used. So in my family, there's this lore about this lady, and it goes back on my great-great-grandma, I think. I don't know. The story was that she always had a gallon of vodka with her. Well, the reason is because she was kind of like the village nurse, and she would make tinctures with the plants. And what do you do when you make a tincture? You usually use vodka, alcohol, and you put the herbs in the jar and you let it sit for a while. But the lore was that, she was, it became that she always had this.
Right.
She was a drinker, obviously, right? Yeah, that's how the story changed over time. Poor great grandma. She said, "That was why I was using it to fix her, you ding dongs."
No, I've done that before. I had thyroid disease for a long time, and that was one of the things I did with bugleweed, which is an herb, and it's so. I mean, it's again. I think I hope at least that we can find the balance. I try to. I say drop my opinion and keep a really open mind about everything because. You really don't know until you give something a try. And thankfully, as I said, there are more, there's people can actually find physicians who are trained in the use, through the Society of Medical, I think it's medical marijuana physicians. I mean, there's, you can look it up, you can find people in your area. But as I said, the nurses, if people go to my website, actually, it's dementiacoachdiane.com. And there's, I do have a button there that says, it says gummy support for dementia. It'll take you to the healer's site, but if they scroll down just a little bit, it'll, the gummies that we use will come up, the respite gummies. But if they scroll down just a little bit, they'll see where it says book a free consult. And so that will take them, as I said, to the nurses who are just, again, they're just aligning, with the healer company to help people get started on the right dose, so they have the best chance of getting success, and then have someone that can hold their hand really every step of the way. And I'm so like, why wouldn't you want to do that? Like, at least explore that first and see if you get the result.
That's interesting because I recently, you know who Dr. Amen is?
Yes, of course.
The
Yes.
brain guy. So there's been some new research that says that smoking weed can decrease our memory and eventually cause dementia. So it's interesting. At the same time, what you're experiencing is it's helping with the anxiety. So they're
Oh, yeah.
obviously I think with all plants, well, any food really. I mean, you got to, if I just ate fruit 24 hours a day, I'd probably create I
Sure.
might become diabetic. Who knows? But anyway, it's just interesting how some of these things we've got to, be attuned to, what's a good dose, what's right
Well,
for us. Obviously, a lot of people doing it recreationally. I think is a whole nother thing.
oh, that's a whole other thing, and again, people that are going for that psychoactive effect, they can overdo it. So, I mean, I wouldn't be
Yeah.
surprised if maybe there were, negative brain changes, but as I said, and so of course we're still finding out more about it. I mean, I just found out that I think Dr. Steele is another one that I follow on Instagram, and he said that Miralax actually, the molecule is aligned with polyethylene, which they're
yeah.
finding, the plastic, micro doses of plastic in the brain. You're like, okay, now we can't use Miralax. I mean, so
No, should
can
never
go-
use Miralax ever.
so and we don't, so we use, I keep it, I don't use any artificial stimulants. I don't use anything artificial for Ben. It's, we do a natural elimination events, which is great. But I mean, I think for me, I have to go back to, and for some people, they may not resonate with this. I really have to learn how to trust my intuition, which for me, I do believe is the way God speaks to me.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in constant prayer because, on any given day, as I said, and I don't scroll too much on social media. Of course, I want people to watch our stuff. I mean, and I'm grateful
Right.
when they do, because we have an amazing community of caregivers that all have an amazing amount of experience. So what's so great about the community that has grown up around Ben and myself, truly, I think only God could have done that. I'll say that from the first point of view, because I got that God nudge to start to share our journey. It was about 3 years into everything. And quite honestly, I didn't know what to do. And I have to admit, I really felt like it was too personal and too painful to share on social media.
I can imagine.
I didn't know anything about it either. I had a negative attitude towards social media. I have to confess. It was like, I think I posted once on Facebook in 20 years. I kind of thought of it as waste book, but I've done a 180 on that because I kept getting that nudge to share our journey, and I did it very reluctantly. But within 3 months, we had over 100,000 followers on Instagram, and I was like, what?
Wow.
So it was, I was astonished. And, so now it's been, it was just January of last year when I first started to post. And so here we are, about a year and a half later, and across, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Facebook, we have about 165,000 followers, and just had a chance to share our story on ABC News in Philadelphia. And it was just, again, a testimony, I'll say, to God's love and support, because, I don't pray for Ben to be cured. I don't know what the highest and best is for all concerned. I honestly don't. I do pray for a different perspective every day, and for me to keep leading with love instead of fear. But boy, there's no way I could have orchestrated the details of what's gone on the past couple of years. It seems like every time that I came up against what felt like an absolute brick wall, I just got guidance for like the next best step, and then the next best step. And I quite honestly had a deposit on a care community for Ben because I didn't think I'd be able to, I couldn't handle it at the time, but it didn't work out. And so we're still here,
That's amazing because, and quite frankly, and I've went around to all the Alzheimer's care units, and it's a warehouse. It's a very fancy warehouse, and they serve the cheapest food. I mean,
It's
there's just not the data there the knowledge to do
well,
what's best for these people. I mean, there's when I put mom in one initially for the first 2 months and went, holy crap, this is the wrong place to be. This one poor guy sitting there all day long on a couch. No one's giving him water. No one's giving, I mean, he's just sitting there.
and again, and
It's just horrible.
I don't want to diss anything. Certainly, a lot of these.
Oh, I do. I mean, I've talked to him. I said, look, you guys are doing the wrong stuff. I got the knowledge. There's a book here. Read the book.
Well,
You were serving them diet soda. The worst thing you could give them.
no, it's
Like, what the hell?
it does come down to money, and I'm actually paying more for caregivers here in the home than I would be if Ben was
Right.
in the community. And I don't know how things are going to work out financially. I mean, if I start to do the projections, I'm like, holy shit, I'm going to have to help sell the house in about a year. But you know what? I am trusting that God's going to give me the next best thing to do. And I don't know what it will be right now, but I have, and we found our caregivers, frankly, through, it was all word of mouth. I mean, I
Wow.
haven't even worked with, and again, there's nothing wrong with working with an agency. I just haven't had to do that because of the way things unfolded. And so,
Mhm.
and I'm spending more than you could say I need to. I do need to have help at night because
I was going to ask you about that. Is that you got to have someone watch him?
it's a non-negotiable because especially with Lewy Body Dementia, REM sleep gets interrupted. I mean, it's part of the pattern. And so even though we have made huge strides with the gummy regimen that Ben is on, he'll have those oddball nights and you never know when they're going to be, and he needs to sleep downstairs because I don't want him getting on the steps at night, and we have gates up and everything. So, I mean, that was one of the things I decided that, it was self-care for him, but self-care for me. And it's a non-negotiable. And so if people don't have help, I mean, certainly I know the financial piece of it, it's huge. And that's, but I'm not going to go down with the ship, and I figure, like one step at a time, we'll figure it out. If I have to sell the house at some point, I will, and.
So I take it you're retired or you're there. You don't work for anybody.
Well, no, I worked for Big Pharma, and after I left that, I actually did have was just starting my coaching and consulting business. As I said, I'm trained as a life and business coach, and I love it, and that's what I had intended to do as my second career. Ben continued on as a musician because you never are not a musician. As I said, it'll be a recording studio in our home. But there was like a series of life events, my mom got sick, my sister got sick, COVID hit, and then stuff happened with Ben. And so, long-winded answer to your question, quite honestly, the community that has come up, it's become like a second career because I have a newsletter. I have, I try to post almost every day across the different social media platforms. I'm doing my best to build up our YouTube channel with longer form content because I'm asked to talk about different topics, like legal issues and how do you handle the financial stuff, and Ben is technically on hospice. What's that all about? So, I mean, I really do feel passionate about sharing what I've learned, but also creating the community to share what they've learned because I don't have all the answers. I mean, I am a coach, but I only know one type of dementia. But within the community, on Instagram and, as I said, TikTok and Facebook.
Well, hindsight being 2020, I think a lot of people who be watching this channel be saying, what's the top 3 things that I should do right away, not wait on? And what's the top 3 things I probably shouldn't do? So
Sure. I'm going to say number 1, get your legal power of attorney in order, durable medical and financial.
Right.
I mean, I had my neighbors as witnesses. I did work with an elder care attorney. It was worth every penny to do that. And I mean, Ben was just about at the point where he wasn't going to be able to sign his name. So we slid in under the wire on that. So I'm like, get that, because you don't want to have to go into something like guardianship. I mean, And now you've got to get the courts involved and everything else. So get your paperwork in order for sure. Also, start to build your support system before you need it. And in that case, now we don't have children. Ben doesn't have any family, and my siblings are emotionally supportive, but they're not close enough to help me. So I did actually, once again, it did require financial, I just had to use our money. I'm using our retirement resources. And I did work with an elder care consultant. And, you can find these people online, but she actually was a nurse that had run a memory care center. And she then was working independently to help people like myself who all of a sudden go like, wow, what do I do now? And she had caregivers that had worked with her so she could vet them, and so I was comfortable from the get-go when, as I said, especially when Ben came out of the hospital, he needed 2 people to take care of him early on. Things have settled down, enough that one person can handle it, but he needs 24/7 supervision. He can't be left by himself. And I'm a little nervous, running outside to water a plant or something, as I said, because he will go through times when he's not steady on his feet and you just have to be right there with him. But as I said, so I would say, get your support system early. And the thing is, and I'm deeply grateful that I had some financial resources to use, but, explore things at churches. Every county has a Department of Aging. Find out what's available in your area, because there are, services and people that will help, and don't be afraid, for instance, to also have your loved one assessed for hospice. They don't have to be in the last 6 months of their life. People have, again, all this stigma attached to hospice as well. For me, they're an extra layer of support.
If you just turned in, we're talking with Dementia Coach Diane Chew. By the way, it's episode 233. Miss any parts of it, go catch it on the podcast, Whole Body Detox Show. Links at livingwaterscleanse.com. While you're there at Living Waters Cleanse, if you haven't watched it, watch the video, The 4 Natural Laws of Healing. We teach you how to heal naturally from the inside out. You got to get rid of the toxins. You got to heal the gut first, because how it lives is how you live. We'll be back in a moment. Stay tuned. Once in a lifetime, a healing tool comes across your path that can really change the ability for the body to heal naturally and quickly. We have found such a tool, and it has changed the way my family lives and how our clients at Living Waters are helping to heal their body. It's called phototherapy, and phototherapy is the ability of your body using waves of light to turn on your body's ability to make its own stem cells. No surgeries, just simply a little Band-Aid sized patch that can activate your body to make stem cells. As you age, you're producing less and less stem cells, and by age 60, you're making none. So when it comes to healing and repairing, it is a long, long process. We can now speed that process up by using phototherapy. Go over to stemcellpatch.net and watch the videos there. And go ahead and try these patches for a few months. These patches have helped so many of our clients reverse pain, help speed up the healing, sleep better, and on and on. You'll see some of the testimonials over there. It's an amazing little tool that you should be using right now. For less than the cost of a cup of coffee per day, you can now be increasing your body's ability to make the stem cells on its own. Stemcellpatch.net, or call the office at 208-3789-911. Nothing is more exciting than seeing a client shed their diseases and symptoms caused from accumulated toxins from the chemicals in our foods, the clothes we wear, and the air we breathe, then by cleansing through colon hydrotherapy and treating the whole body naturally. Here's what a few clients had to say about their experience at Living Waters Wellness Center.
My name's Richard. I come to Living Waters because I was low on energy and for my memory, and I've accomplished both. Living Waters did it for me. Thank you, Living Waters.
My name's Peg. I came to Living Waters about a year ago, so I run pretty hard when I'm working. But through this retreat, I think one of the biggest things that I've gained is that self-confidence. Thank you, Living Waters.
Hi, my name is Anna Lewis, and I came to do the 10-day cleanse because I hadn't been feeling really well, and so I could cleanse, get rid of parasites and toxins in my body, and those were great help. So thank you, Living Waters.
To learn more about the 10-day healing retreat, go to livingwaterscleanse.com, click on the link for Natural Laws of Healing, and watch the video and check out this hundreds of clients who healed from their symptoms under the Success Stories tab. Or call the office at 208-3789-911. That's 208-3789-911. The preceding examples may not be typical of your experience, may not be right for you. Talk to a healthcare professional to see if cleansing is right for you. Welcome back. We're talking to Dementia Coach Diane Chew. All the links to the show are in the show notes, episode 233 at Whole Body Detox Show. Links at livingwaterscleanse.com. And when you're over on the podcast, do give us a 5-star review and do share an episode with a buddy of yours who could benefit from learning about detoxification and healing the body naturally. Also on our website, livingwaterscleanse.com, watch the video, The 4 Natural Laws of Healing. Learn how to detox and heal properly. Now back to the show.
We have a nurse that comes once a week. They actually, and not all companies are made the same. It's paid for by Medicare, but they offer different services. And if you don't like one hospice company that you're working with, you can, detach from them and work with a different one. So the company that we're working with, again, there are Medicare guidelines for assessing your loved one, but some companies are a little stricter than others. Ben clearly needs 24/7 support, but talk with them and see, talk with different companies that offer hospice care in your area. You can get recommendations from your primary care physician. I got a recommendation for the company that we work with, and they've been wonderful, and the only thing is that if your loved one is taking any kind of medication that's considered a cure, like if someone is still taking chemotherapy, for instance, that's not allowed under the hospice guidelines. But everything that Ben takes is for symptom control and to keep him comfortable. And even, the specialist that he sees, the neurologist we see, periodically and everything, that's, again, it's for symptom management. So he's allowed to continue to see his specialist. He's allowed to stay on the medications that he was on. And, they're fully supportive, of course, of the regimen that we're on that's working for Ben. So that's what I'm saying. Get that support system in place before you're in crisis.
Right.
And, in terms of what not to do, I've got to say to all caregivers, do not neglect yourself. I admit that I still have a voice in my head. Like, when I have a caregiver here, it's hard for me to relax and take care of myself. But I know it has to be done, or I will not last for the long haul. And Ben would not want me to go down with the ship. So if people don't have help, or they're not receiving help, they got to ask yourself why, because oftentimes it's not just financial. It might be like, well, I don't want somebody else in my house, or like they feel like it's kind of a badge of honor to do it all themselves. I'm like, no, it's not. And so, and if their loved one is saying like, well, I don't want somebody else here. If you're the primary caregiver, you make the decisions. And I guess the other thing in terms of what not to do, don't listen to people that aren't living it. Because again, I don't have the issue of other family members weighing in, but I've heard from a lot of caregivers that either their children or their loved ones' relatives, in this case, if Ben had a family that was trying to direct things, I'd be like, no. If you're not living this, you don't know. So don't let anybody else tell you what's best. You need, it's fine to get advice from other people. Of course, I'm not saying don't get other input, but if you're the one that's living it day in and day out, you as the primary caregiver need to make the decisions for what's best for you and what's best for your loved one. And
or call Diane.
Yeah, really.
Call Diane, who's lived it. That's the best source of anything. Yeah.
We have an amazing community. As I said, you can find me at Dementia Coach Diane on the different social media platforms. I do answer my direct messages. I do answer my email. It may take a little time, for me to get back to you, but please, as I said, I do feel passionate about supporting caregivers. I just started a self-care membership. It's like for less than a specialty cup of coffee a month, you could join our self-care membership. We just had our first call yesterday.
Awesome.
Yeah, I have a full self-paced video program on self-care
Awesome.
and live monthly calls. So,
What about nutritional supplements? Is he on any specific range? Did you find anything that was really important?
for us,
Yeah.
the B vitamins are hugely important for both Ben and myself. And so, two easy ways to build nutrition I found is using unsalted organic bone broth in place of water. Like because I do admit I give Ben, foods that are easy to stick together, which often does include pasta. I have to admit, things that help the food to stick together. But what happens is, I said, I want to balance that with as much nutrition as possible. He will, I'm happy to say, eat salads, and he'll eat vegetables, but getting those B vitamins in. And the other thing I use is nutritional yeast, which has a kind of you can get it with a savory flavor. You can also get it without any flavor. And I add that, to his eggs. I add it to, I can sprinkle it on top of a salad. I can add it, as I said, to spaghetti, things like that. So those are two easy ways to do it. And also a daily smoothie that I give him with things like lion's mane, reishi mushrooms, resveratrol. Again, I add some of I use the bone broth as the liquid, and Ben is healthy. He's got a great appetite. He eliminates well.
I was going to ask you about that, about elimination. We've always found here, because we do colon hydrotherapy as our main modality on our 10-day retreats, but we've had a few people come through with Alzheimer's, full blown. And there was always a constipation issue. One lady, in fact, could not speak. She was nonverbal. And on day 5, she started talking to me.
Wow.
And I was mixing up something for her. And I looked around and I says, "You've really made a big change." And she says, "Yes, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but before I came here, I just wanted to kill myself."
Wow.
And so you think about it, transverse colon, that's where all the nerves in the brain go to transverse colon. That's where your serotonin gets made.
Yes,
And
exactly.
I found a lot of people with, we do a lot of people with brain fog, right? And it's always constipation, always the average person's packing 12 to 15 pounds of just old poop in their intestinal tract.
It's great. And Ben has typically had what we call, a lazy colon, and, constipation was always an issue for him. But I do what I call my power smoothie, and I include stewed prunes, chia seeds. As I said, I use the bone broth, and I use acacia Senegal fiber that I found has been, more natural. I know psyllium husk is, another good one that you can use.
Yeah.
And, that keeps things moving.
Cool. Have you done any colonics with him?
I have not. I'm not sure how that would work with him. As I said, he moves so constantly that it's a little bit of a challenge. And as I said, he's so, I'm not saying I wouldn't be willing to try, but he's so hypersensitive. I mean, to just, I think anything physical. I can't quite imagine doing that with him. I've had to use some suppositories, and even just getting that in him was like, whoa, I almost had to sedate him to do it. And
Oh, wow. Yeah.
so that's why I've been, I guess, reluctant to try something that would be,
Yeah.
that distressing for
We
him.
got a video. I'll put this in the show notes. We have a video on how a colonic is done. There's probably a lot of listeners going to go, "What's a colonic? How is it done?"
It would be,
And I would say, we have an open system, and my wife explains it in 12 minutes and how a colonic is done. It's very, very easy, very safe. You're all covered up, very private. But we've had some autistic people, and again, there was concern, will they be able to do it? And I think it's all about how it gets introduced. As I recall, one of them watched the video, came in, saw it, looked at it. What do you think? Looked at the machines they're going to get on, and really talked them through it. And I think the mom in this case was just really good at, good connection there, and trusted the mom. And I think that's a big piece of it. So any of you out there listening, if you're thinking about that, it is, you got to kind of wade into it. I've had little kids do it, and some kids like, nah. I mean, I've had as young as 7 years old. That's kind of hard. But usually the teenagers are much easier.
Sure.
But an open system is very, very easy to do for anybody. And that's the system we use.
To know more about it, because I mean, I can't really. I think Ben does take in more than he can express.
Yeah.
I can't quite imagine trying to explain that to him, but again, I do try to keep an open mind because, we've come a long way with God's help.
Yeah. We had one guy, he had his wife, they both came to the 10-day, lovely lady. But she got sundowners, and I didn't know as much as I know now, especially what you just shared. It's good to know about, some of the gummies and so forth, but,
amazing.
I mean, it definitely helped. I mean, she was constipated, and the diet, they moved into it might've been assisted living. It was kind of retirement/assisted living. But again, the problem was the food was a lot of carbohydrates, a lot of breads. That's going to make everything gum up. Just put dairy and bread together. You might as well just put dump glue down your gullet.
No, it's as they said, and it is a challenge. And in fact, I am going to be doing a live event with one of the nurses from Leaf 411 who actually talks about how to use hemp within the diet. Because hemp oil, for instance, there's some different things that can really help to keep your system flowing in a healthy way. And they said people just really. Well, the education, I think, will help reduce the stigma or take it away altogether, because they said this is about using, different parts of the plant that can really help in a positive way.
Well, definitely what your chia seeds, psyllium husk, your mixture there is great. What I've found over the years, people usually start with, taking, Miralax or one. And again, there's toxic ingredients. Just take straight psyllium. Now, if you're already constipated, you want to add psyllium, because that's like putting straw on mud in the hot sun. You're going to make a brick. And a lot of people have just solid bricks, don't even know it, in their gut. We have an herbal formula we use called colon cleanse and tone. It's very gentle, very good. But then the next thing that they gravitate to is magnesium. And the problem with magnesium is it flushes water, and what you're doing short term is you're blowing water into the colon. You probably don't know this, but the average colon gets 2.5 gallons of water per day, and it recycles and gets into the tissues, goes back into the body. Well, if you basically turn on the jets, the firefighter hose, if you will, and you blow the water through the colon, yes, you're going to move some poop, but what have you just done? You just dehydrated yourself.
Exactly.
And then they come and see me, and it's been 2 weeks, and they're stuck, and it's 4, 5, or 6 colonics just to break the debris apart. I've seen people 2 months. I don't know how they're even still alive. It just was shocking to me, but we've saved them. I mean, with the system we use, very gentle, and our therapists were highly trained, and we're very good at getting rid of the blockages, no matter how bad it is. We had one guy, it hadn't been 2 months, took 11 days, and I just had to say, look at it's either you go get it cut out, go to surgery, or you stay the course. Water's going to hydrate. It's going to dissolve the old poop. It's going to come out. Trust me.
Yeah.
Later, I had someone just break his record. She went 14 days.
Oh.
And for those of you listening, if you do them closer together, that's better, like back to back to back to back, because you're hydrating, and that builds upon itself. It gets some synergy in there to help release it. And some of you may not like the first couple of days if you're super backed up. Others may go like, woohoo, this is great. Everyone's a little bit different. Especially when you release, you're like, woohoo.
Yeah. You probably all relate, just being human.
But it's really important, because that's where the serotonin gets made. That transverse colon's key. I've had people bipolar medication. We've got them off bipolar medication by getting their gut healed.
Wow, that's incredible.
So much going on in the gut. And on our website, and I'll post this too, we have a video called The 4 Natural Laws of Healing. If you watch that in its entirety, I go through the whole thing, how everything works. It's all connected, your lymphatic, your liver, kidneys. I mean, how it's all one amazing system that communicates, but you got to heal the gut first. The gut can stop everything.
I believe it, because as I said, it's when Ben was not, early on, it really increased his agitation. And like you said, that brain fog, that mental confusion. So I think it's certainly been a combination of everything that we're finally getting into, a regimen that probably, he's almost the best he can be for now.
What kind of a diet is he? Are you doing more of a keto diet, or what do you?
It's not necessarily. I mean, again, this is where I kind of, follow. It's that combination of what he's willing to eat because,
Okay.
he burns so many calories because he moves so much that, I'm constantly looking for, how do I keep calories up, carbs down, So as I said, I certainly, I'm focused on getting that good protein in him, but that can sometimes back things up too, So I mean, it's to tell you the truth, it's just my version of, as I said, using intuition, what I know has worked, for him in the past, what he seems to respond well to, what he's willing to eat.
Right.
It may shift on any given day, but as I said, and you see a naturopath who helps us because she, can guide us, when he's maybe stops eating something that I thought was healthy for him, of how to make some healthy replacements.
Right. That's all good advice. Have you did anything, any brain stuff? Like here in Boise, we have a place that uses a thing called IASA. It's called Clear Mind of Vital. I had him on the show. I'll put the links in the show notes. And I did about 20 sessions with Mom, and then I got too busy and I stopped. I wish I wouldn't have, because I saw some improvement in her. And there's also some PEMF therapy. We have a PEMF machine here. But there was a gal, Dr. Linda Larson, I interviewed on the show, and I actually took Mom up to see her. I did the treatment. Dad did the treatment. Mom did the treatment. And it did great things for me. And my dad had a stroke in the middle of it.
Wow.
And that did not help any of the treatments for my poor mother. Yeah. She really was freaking out and was upset. And on the brain scans, you could see what was going on in the brain. And right in the middle of the whole thing, Dad got a stroke, had to go went to the hospital twice. We had to then put him in a rehab facility. And, it just so Twitter, because, the fear of, losing your husband, obviously, what's going to happen to me, all those things. I would say she was a lot worse back then than she is now.
Well, of course, because that kind of stress, I mean, again,
that's huge.
Your amygdala is just going crazy, you're going to shut down the frontal cortex and you can't think straight, So I'm trusting that as she's adjusting to his loss, of course, and we have to really be mindful of the emotional well-being of our loved ones, because at least for Ben, I think sometimes all he's feeling are the emotions because he's not really thinking about the past or projecting into the future. At least he's so much in the present moment.
That's awesome.
On the one hand, as I said, it's a good reminder for me because I can still get caught up in, mourning the past or being afraid of the future. And yet being with him in the present moment I always say that's where our power lies. And so, again, in answer to your question, we have done some, I'd say, alternative therapies. We were working with a doctor who founded the Holistic Center for Autistic Children, but again, looking at some of the similarities in, the brain patterns, and given that Ben might actually be somewhat on the spectrum, we were doing some sound and light therapy that was tailored to what was going on in his brain. In fact, they took a voice print, and of course, our voice prints are like our fingertips. They're, unique. And so she could tell by taking a 30-second voice print, where some of the, what toxins were showing up, where there were imbalances in terms of his diet. And so it's amazing, she would graph it out and then would guide me, in terms of his diet, specifically for what he needed. And then she started doing it for me too, because again, caregivers, we need to take extra good care of ourselves. We can, we hear that analogy about putting a mask on ourselves first, but like, how do you actually do that? Well, as I said, I need, the same nutritional support that Ben does, quite honestly. And I need good movement. I need fresh air. I need good sleep. So, I mean, it's really, really important that we, keep that in mind as a balance going forward.
Wow. So the next question I had was, I just did a test on myself. I did a full panel on my blood, and I found out, I was surprised. I eat very clean, but I couldn't believe how much aluminum I had. And I had mold.
Wow. Yeah, mold is
And
impacting
that's a
our
big deal.
is. Yeah, I know.
And so have you done any of that? Have you?
Yeah, we have, and I've done, well, we've done like heavy metal detoxes. We've done, the mold was more of an issue, with air filters. I mean, we've used, special filters for that. Yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, sometimes there's so much there's so much good information out there, which is terrific, but I admit it can be a little bit overwhelming, so that's where one of the things I need to work into my self-care and care for Ben is what I call that quiet time, because at the end of any given day, even after this experience together, my mind's drilling like, oh, let me check that out. Let me check this out. I need to get really quiet, and then say, like, what's the priority? Like, what do I need to know about this, God? It's like, because right now I'm feeling a little inadequate about making some of these decisions. And so I find that if, that I need to really make sure that I take some of that quiet time, to get clear on the next best steps. So,
That's true.
I feel like I may not be giving you the best answer, but yeah, I feel like, we've tried just about everything. Some of the things, that, well, may not be everything. But we have tried a lot of alternative therapies, and you certainly need to give them enough time, keep an open mind, see if you're going to get any results. But some things aren't going to maybe make that bit much of a difference. And then I'm like, okay, let me go towards the things, that are, because
Right.
you can't do it all.
Yeah, do it all. I also did a genetic test, and the interesting part of that is I don't have the APO4E gene. That's the gene that most people that have Alzheimer's has, and don't have that, but I had 2 of the MTHFR gene, which you don't methylate,
Right.
which made a lot of sense.
Let me just make I was supposed to talk with somebody else. I didn't actually know we were recording today. So if we can take this
So
over.
then the other thing I discovered, so I think it's good to have these tests. I've never done, but I couldn't believe how much aluminum. Still had some glyphosate in me, which is amazing, but they're spraying it everywhere.
Yeah.
Aluminum blew me away. I don't know how I'm getting aluminum. So I don't drink anything out of aluminum, cooking or nothing. So
Again, yeah.
all these things, all these factors, it's just good for, I think, anybody listening, is that, self-care, like you mentioned. So I think we get taught as an American public, like, you can rest when you're dead, is the theme I've heard throughout the years in a lot of organizations I've been in. And I'm a self-proclaimed workaholic, no doubt, but I like it. I mean, I like what I do. But you're right. We got to take care of putting the proper nutritionist. We got to take the time. Every day I go out and bathe in the sun for at least, 10 to 30 minutes. I've got a lot, certain these things are must do's. And I think that's wise advice you're giving people, is that, look, you're a caregiver. You've got to take care of you. Because I see caregivers come here after they put their dad or their mom, they buried them, or they put them in a center where it was the end of their time. And they come here, they're so exhausted.
And I can't say it enough. As I said, it's like, if you don't have help, you got to ask yourself why. And only you can take care of your own nervous system. It's like you can't blame anybody else. You can't, you got to do it. And it's just, as I said, and decide on your non-negotiables. For me, sleep is a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
I must have it, I must, hydrating, other things, I have water bottles all over the house. I mean, there's a couple things that I'm just like, yep, I might be eating peanut butter pretzels for lunch, but I'm going to get that water in me. So there's a couple things that, and again, your body knows what's most important, and I too, will feel all those old conditioned thoughts coming in saying, you can't afford to take care of yourself. You don't have time to take care of yourself. I'm like, thank
Yeah.
you for sharing, but I'm going to do it no matter what. And I really have experience. As I said, I'm going on 5 years now with Ben. And to tell you the truth, it's not the nightmare that I thought it was going to be. I'm not saying that I don't wake up with anxiety. I do. For me, if I didn't have my relationship with my creator, I couldn't do this. But I connect with a higher power like right away. I'm like, okay, walk with me today. Walk with me. Show me the next best thing to do. I am not willing to give in to fear, which will threaten to take us down. It's like, no, I'm going to lead with love for myself and for my husband. And I'm going to choose to trust that love is always greater than fear, and I mean, the worst thing we can do to our bodies is let fear take a hold of us, so there's lots of all this great stuff to do. But if we're making these choices from a fearful place, I mean, I don't know what you think, but they're not going to do you any good. If you come from love and trust that you're not meant to go down with the ship, you'll be guided for what I believe will take care of you and your loved one.
This has come up in my brain a couple of times, so I want to share it. So I did a show on Dr. Norman Cousins, and he had this rare disease, and he was in a hospital, and it was driving him crazy. Have you read the book? And he laughed himself. He bought videotapes and just laughed and laughed and laughed. And I was did another show here last week, and I was reading another guy who smoked cigarettes, drank a fifth of whiskey every day, all this stuff. And they're like, what's up? How's this guy still living? I mean, he's sedentary, he smokes, he drinks. But what he did every day is he watched funny movies. And he laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And that's the only thing I could attribute to why this guy was still alive, and why he was doing so good, because he should be living well.
We practice laughter yoga in this house. Ben and I are apart, and we just laugh for no particular reason. And at first you feel kind of stupid because you're going like, yeah, I got nothing to laugh about today. I'm like, okay, well, you can laugh about that. I mean, it's like life is absurd. Right now, what's going on around the planet is more intense than ever before. And yet we have the choice whether to buy into fear or buy into love. And as I said, it's like I have to wake up every morning. I'm like, okay. And I confess to God, I don't know if I'm totally trusting you to help me today, but if I confess the truth, he'll say like, okay, I got you. I know that. I know you're fearful, but I'm with you. I got your back. And believe me, David, I'm still like shocked and stunned that we have come this far. Ben is still with me. I'm still paying the mortgage, and I'm actually feeling pretty good. I mean, the love I have for my husband. I mean, we've been together since I was 18. So, it's been a love affair for, over 50 years. But what's so amazing about this particular journey with dementia is that once you drop all expectations of your loved one, which you have to do. I mean, I can't have any expectations of Ben as a partner or a man or even as an adult. But in the absence of those expectations, there's unconditional love. And that to me is the greatest healing power of all, and so that's what I do my best to access first every day is unconditional love for Ben, unconditional love for myself. And then I make the best choices I can about diet and exercise. I mean, all the other stuff that we need to do to take care of these bodies, if I start with love, I trust I'll make the best decisions for the highest and best for all concerned.
Awesome advice. And it's dementiacoachdiane.com.
That's it. Yep.
All right. Go dementiacoachdiane.com. Connect with her. Share this video. There's lots of people out there in your circle, friends and family, that need this data because it's not something we ever learned or prepared for. And it hits us in the face like a big brick wall sometimes. And it's like, what do you do? Like what you shared with us, what I'm experiencing now. So, Diane, thanks for coming on. This is going to help a lot of people. I really appreciate you.
And I appreciate the opportunity and what you're doing as well, because we all, in a connected mentality. If we could just stay connected, don't isolate. That's my last piece of advice. Please don't isolate. Certainly don't be ashamed. Don't be upset. I know we get protective of our loved ones, but stay connected. And we welcome you to our community. It's an amazing community that exchanges a lot of love and support every day.
That's awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another edition. I think this is number 233. If you missed any parts of the show over in the podcast, you can find it all there. We'll put all the show notes that are appropriate for the show. But until next week, have a blessed week, my friends.